Off the bench with Rozzy Sport.
Welcome back to Off the Bench with Rozzy Sports, the show where we dig into mindset, methods, and motivation behind developing not just great athletes, but great people. Today's guest is a true powerhouse in the world of performance, Randy Hadley, world-renowned strength and conditioning coach and owner of RHFITPRO Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. For more than 15 years, Randy has been helping athletes at every level from pros to youth unlock their full potential through science, movement, and purpose. His system, RHFITPRO, is redefining what it means to train for performance. Because at RHFITPRO, they don't just train for the game, they train for life. Randy, welcome to Off the Bench.
Thank you for having me. I look forward to this. Look forward to sharing some information, learning something, and giving some.
Randy, let's start with your journey. You've been in this game for over 15 years. What originally sparked your passion for human performance and how that evolved into creating RHFITPRO?
Um, that's kind of cliche. Was a young aspiring athlete in high school. I played what I call the traditional three: baseball, basketball, football. But then had a back then, which not so popular then, but more popular now. I had an ACL injury. And being an motivated athlete, I would rehab, train to go back to play, and would stop the rehab aspect only just to continue to hurt my knee. I never got the surgery at the time. So at a certain point, I had to give up playing, but I still love sports. So I just pivoted, no pun intended, and just created a situation where I could take the three things I love doing, sports, business, and helping people.
You talk about human movement. What does it mean in practice, and how does a deeper understanding change the way you approach training at all?
It's just that it's becoming a good mover. Everybody, wants to have strength and they just think minimize that to just being strong and lifting weights. But, the biggest thing is how you move with it, how you're able to access that strength. So the first thing for me, are you a good mover? Because getting strong is easy. All you got to do is pick up heavy stuff quite often. You can get strong by default, but that doesn't mean you know how to utilize it for whatever you're going to try to, sport, lifestyle that you're going to use it for. So it's just really focusing on what the utilization of that strength is going to be.
Definitely with just strength, you don't want to just be some people just pick up stuff and they're strong, but you definitely got to work on other things also.
Yeah. So mobility again is how how you function, how you move. So then when you put strength on it, you can still utilize it.
A lot of people go out there just not knowing how to. They just go into the gym to work out, and just just not knowing. And do you feel as if they're tearing their body up more so, or
Yeah,
what?
again, it's one of the things we call to say you don't know what you don't know. So you just think going to the gym, by itself is going to be the difference. And and you don't know when to rest, you don't know when to level up. It's a holistic approach. It's not, we talk about the cliche 10,000 hours, but it's not just 10,000 hours, it's the collective of everything. When to rest, when to ramp up, when to pull back, based on the schedule, especially here where everything is so much year round and so much high volume. You got to know how to balance that with the work. And next thing you kind of overwork. Like a funny thing for me, like I never use the word grinding because grinding in itself means you wear down. And that's what you end up seeing with a lot of that is just getting worn down by getting overworked and not finding that balance with everything.
Right?
Mm.
Balance is definitely important. Like you said, especially when you come from an injury, you're trying to get back. Everybody just want to get in the gym, work, 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 get it back, I get back. But if they don't find that balance, you're doing more damage. So I agree with you.
100%. Yeah.
All right, so you've worked with athletes from all over the world. What are some common performance gaps you've seen at the highest level, and how do you help athletes overcome them?
One is when you deal with talent, there's funny enough, it becomes a lack of awareness because so many things sometimes come easy to them. They don't really think about it. So they don't really realize sometimes how much control they have of situations just because it's by default. So the biggest thing gap is just that lack of awareness of how much control they really have. And then learning how to deal with adversity. Because I say it sometimes it comes easier to them because of their talent. Then when you have to deal with adversity or overcoming certain hurdles, they have to then, understand what that sheer will is sometimes when it's without the ball, without the sport for a time period.
How effective can something like mindfulness be in conjunction with like your basketball training Is that something that you would, I guess, promote or
Oh, 100%. So the fun part about it, we joke is that, sometimes even for me, one of the jokes in my facility is that sometimes our conversations are more heavy lifting than our actual workouts. And that comes from that is that mental awareness. That is that mindfulness, that beyond the game, beyond just the physical aspect of how do you, mentally, physically prepare or unplug in all aspects. So again, that kind of ties on that holistic approach, is that mental and just that mindfulness is very important. Sometimes it's more important than a lot of people realize, because again, sometimes the game's not always favorable for you, physically, mentally, or emotionally, and you got to know how to center yourself and gather yourself to still persevere for the long haul.
RHFITPRO takes a very individual approach. Walk us through your process for evaluating an athlete and building a program that fits their unique body and goals.
Kind of going back to what we talked about before, is that, I'll spend more time watching how you move, finding out what you know or don't know, and then I try to meet you where you're at. Being fortunate to do it for as long as I have, a lot of individuals have certain goals. So I've kind of been down that road before, so I can give some insight on having an idea of what it needs to look like, what you need to be able to do at certain benchmarks. So it really is just that whole individual approach of, how well they move, what they know, what they don't know. Even some of people take injury history for granted, but if you know it, you can see where you've been compensating because you didn't address it when it needed to. There's eventually going to be an issue later on. So that's just it. Just spending time having those conversations, asking some unique questions, whether it's, they may come to me for a particular sport, but what's their history in other sports that I can kind of draw from to help them relate to what I need them to be able to do. Again, we're in a world of specialization, so sometimes it's limited in terms of where they can draw from other experience from other sports or other things. So it's just finding those conversations, meet them where they're at, and then having an understanding of where they're trying to get to, and giving them the realistic benchmarks of trying to recognize and achieve that pathway of progression.
You often say we train for life. What does that philosophy look like day to day? And how do you help athletes carry that mindset beyond the gym or the court?
Again, bigger than the game. If you ever see any of my social media stuff, I always say deeper than you thought. It goes back to what we just talked about, having real conversation about the person, meet them as understanding their athletes, but understanding their people first, making sure they're grounded, make sure they're diverse, again, using coach's word, being mindful as a whole and their whole surrounding. So therefore, sometimes the conversations have nothing to do with the sport itself. It's just about what's going on in life or what's going on in the world, and how you're going to manage to coexist with what's going on. As we see a lot of these things kind of intertwine. So it's just that making sure the person is good and whole, then the athlete and the potential can shine through, because again, being grounded, being diverse, being able to draw on different aspects, whatever that may be, whatever aspect that may be, that then carries outside of the gym, carries outside of the respective sport or field, whatever the case may be.
You actually have an athlete in mind that you could talk about, that actually what you just stated, as far as like coming back from an injury and all the things that you have stated earlier.
I mean, we have a few. Again, I respectfully don't like to say names, but we have situations where we just have athletes that, have setbacks, or on the verge of having something really good for them, and they have to deal with these setbacks. And we just have to understand, there is a higher being, and there is a purpose for whatever happens. Timing is not always on our time. And we have to kind of get grounded and accept those terms, and then we figure out what we can control and learn how to just manage that. Something I tell it's also a great opportunity, because we're so invested with the sport and it consumes so much of our time. It's a great opportunity to just find another hobby as that becomes your outlet. Again, every day is not going to be a great day, so you have to find something that you can kind of gravitate to, that kind of gives you the light at the end of the tunnel, kind of gives you some reprieve from the pressure and the stress that the sport brings you. So we just learn, like I said, whether it's opportunity to read more books, find a different hobby, just something to kind of get your mind off of what you can't do. But understanding, keeping the main thing, why you're showing up at PT, why you're showing up at the gym. Everybody understands the grounded purpose, but that's just not accessible at that time. So we just kind of keep them encouraged. Because when you spend so much time and you feel like it's being taken away from you, it's very easy to get in a dark place really quick.
Right.
So you just have to kind of be that flashlight for them and be that guiding light. That it's bigger than the game, and how hard you work in this moment will dictate how you return to what it is that you love.
Right. That is true.
Because real quick example, I've had one athlete who had a pretty severe injury, and before he could even get to the doctor, he was already calling me and making sure I was down to help him recover from the process. 6 months later, another athlete had the same injury and immediately said they were retiring.
Wow.
So it's just a different perspective of one was committed to this isn't going to define me. The other one was I'm good. I'm done.
Right. Right.
So
but if most of you guys don't know who Randy is to me, he's definitely a mentor, which I definitely appreciate, and it's been a part of my life for at least, oh goodness, for a while now. Right. And I do have three of my kids actually went through some serious injuries, and like what he just stated, the first person I actually called before I even call the doctor sometimes is Coach Randy here because of what he just stated. We're not giving up. We want to find a way to push the issue, to correct whatever it is that caused the injury, or to correct the injury to make them stronger. I might not be saying this the correct way, but we believe in what you're preaching here, sir. Because I can vouch. Three of my kids that are elite athletes right now have been through some serious injuries, and you work them, and they're still on the basketball court today. So yeah, it's definitely what you're preaching is definitely real.
I appreciate it.
Definitely something that we take in consideration, and sure.
Thank you. Yeah, that takes a lot. Again, I appreciate the trust because I understand what a family, what the individual put into it, and then I hold that with a high esteem of a lot of pride of taking on the responsibility of trying to help lead and guide and support the kids and the family in the best way, with the right information to help see them through. Because I understand the stress, the pressure, to trust someone and their advice. So, and I don't take that lightly. So I appreciate that.
Sure.
All right. So you're known for constantly researching and testing new methods. What's one cutting edge trend or tool in performance training that you're most excited right now about? Anything you're
Unfortunately, nothing new. I think it's really getting a lot of people back to the basics. I think, we get too caught up on innovative, flashy, new, and quick that we forgot getting back to the basics. So sometimes I tell people, my joke is I'm old school with a new school wave. And I know what you're looking for, but I know an old school way of getting it that isn't always as flashy, but it's productive and it's resilient. So I can't say it's so much something new as it is just getting back to the traditional, but you have the fun of it. I do have access sometimes to force plates and different things. So it's fun to take that old school way and then go test it with this new school stuff and continue to get validation that sometimes simple is better. Complicated isn't always a guarantee to success. It's just complicated.
Talk youth development. A lot of young athletes want to go pro before they master the basic. What advice do you give middle and high school players and their parents about building a true foundation?
That kind of goes back to the old school. First thing is that we get so caught up with access to videos that we don't have conversations. I think the first thing is, exposing yourself to where it is you say you want to be. Like you said, young athletes talking about NBA, but then they don't even go to high school games. So they don't even know what the high school game looks like. Or you got high school kids, talking about next level, but don't take time to actually go to a game or go to a practice or even watch games because it's an inconvenience to them. But then you say you want to play at that level. So the biggest thing is educate and expose. One of the big things in the last year or so was getting them to actually take time away from the game that allows them to explore. I think we talk sometimes that um, maybe they get burnt out because they're always training, they're always practicing, they're always going to their games, that then they don't want to go to a gym and watch somebody else play. But that's where you really learn what you need to be doing, because there's three things: there's where you are, there's where you need to be, and where you want to go. And you got to know where you are in that process. And then it's the catch 22. You think you have time, but that time goes away real quick when you're constantly playing from season to season, and there's really no downtime or off season. And next thing you look up, you're in this challenge now where I have to say it carefully, that a lot of like to reclass, but they reclass to do the same thing, and you still end up being undersized and underdeveloped with that extra year, because you didn't really pay attention to what you were trying to get ready for. You were just kind of caught up on where you're at. So that's the biggest challenge with the youth, is getting them to actually step back from the game a little bit and then kind of understand what that pathway is versus just doubling down on where you're at.
Mm.
All right.
And finally, legacy. What kind of impact do you want RHFITPRO to leave on performance industry, and what do you want your athletes to take with them long after they leave your program?
It would be the pillars of what RHFITPRO is. You see on the website, you see on the shirts, is discipline, structure, commitment, consistency. And the final one is confidence. And it's just that, those are life lessons. Those are things that you can carry with you beyond the sport. You can carry into any business. You just have to have those things in place. So I think the legacy is that you have to work for whatever it is you want. You have to, so therefore it takes discipline, it takes consistency, and you got to be committed to it. And I think that's just it, is being a person that's a supporter no matter what the circumstances are, and that you walk away understanding that you grow in every aspect, in the relationship that is built from RHFITPRO. That is not strictly about the ball. It's not strictly about weights. It is really about life. And, the gym will be there for you, and life and well-being is the bigger picture, and quality of life. However you choose to get that, whatever it brings that to you, whether it's a sport or whether the sport gives you an opportunity at transitions, that you just get to learn all those experiences and go into life with eyes wide open.
Being a father as well as a coach with a lot of youth in the community, I mean, everything that you stated as far as like from the aspect of being old school, um, taking it back to the fundamentals, um, and you know, just learning from watching others as well. I think that is important, and a lot of that is missing. So my question to you, real quick, Coach, is that what can we do to start as a community to try to get back to doing that? From a standpoint from working outside the gym into the gym, you know, how can we start doing something like that to actually start reaching other people to get back to doing how it was? Because I'll be honest, I love basketball, but these days watching kids get by just because they naturally athletic, but then they get hurt and then they out the game, and then they can't play for the rest of the season because they're nursing an ankle sprain. Which I don't know about you, but I know when I played, I mean, an ankle sprain didn't keep me down. I kept moving because I did the proper things to strengthen the muscles around it to keep moving. So, what do you think we should be trying to do as coaches to get the youth to understand what you're trying to tell us here now?
I think it's just having a real conversation, which is sometimes uncomfortable because we're afraid of how people may take it and perceive it. But the only thing that's going to save them is the truth. And then they have to choose for themselves what they want to do with it. And that's again, it's called the brutal honesty. And sometimes I tell people, people avoid me because of two things. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to hold you accountable. Um, unfortunately, whether you like it or not, and then you just have to choose what you want to if you're not prepared. And I think that's it. Making yourself available. So that you have to be present. And then the other one is just being okay with being honest with them, and allowing them to then deal with the information that you gave them. And in today's time, I laugh because again, part of here comes the old school is people always say, "Well, I feel like." I appreciate how you feel, but I need to know what you know because I'm going to deal with facts. What do you know about the next level? What do you know about this versus how you feel about it? And then I think you just stay with with the honest take of what you know from based on what you've seen as a coach, what we've seen as coaches. I'm just going to tell you the truth from I've seen this before. I know what this looks like. If you're not careful, these are the bumps you're going to run into. I think that's just it is continue to, have real conversation. I think more conversation needs to be had. Going back to the relationship, cannot keep it transactional in terms of when they just show up and that we, just do our skill work or we just do our training, that we have those conversations with the parents as well as the kids and make sure it's being communicated to all parties involved. I think sometimes there's just a miscommunication. So there's an assumption that certain things are known, and certain things are being told from one to the other. And I think sometimes there's a loss of communication with that assumption. So I think it's just really being present, being willing to communicate, and being honest in that delivering that message.
Right. I try to do the same thing when I'm out there speaking to the parents when they approach me about, you know, what should they do and stuff like that. But like I always run into that parent that always say, "Hey, yeah, well, how do you do this and do that? I want to do this," and I be on, and then I tell them, but then they don't do, and then when they see their kid not performing and all this, then they come back to me, and I'm like, "Well, I already gave you the blueprint. I already told you what to do." Like I don't want to turn my back on them, but at the same time, I already been honest. I told them what to do. I showed them exactly what to do, and it's a tough thing to do that. I mean, it really is.
Here's a Randyism for you. It's okay for you to make them a plate. You ain't got to feed them.
That is true.
So once the plate is made, it's their choice whether they choose to eat or not.
That is true.
That's
That
the
is
thing
true.
that again, if you're not hiding, you're as the kids say, you're not gatekeeping and you're sharing the information, and they choose not to go through the gate and then choose not, then that's not on you. That's simply on them. Again, now like you said, now when they come back around and they find out that you give them the same information you gave them the first time, then again, it really becomes their choice, and that's not a reflection on you. That's just a reflection of their choice to want to circumvent or negate what's being told to them. Because we've got a
Right.
couple of kids in mutual that we're dealing with. I think is very ironic that I'm working with some of them now that had opportunities 2 years ago, and it's unfortunate that they're behind. And I don't know. And unfortunately, time is running out for them to catch up, or it's going to be a longer road than it had to be if they wouldn't have made the right choices at the right time.
Right. So having said that, what is the right time to actually start training your kid? Like my friend Hakeem, he has what?
A five, a four, and a two.
Right. So
Don't
I
ask
mean,
me that. Don't, Ron, don't ask me that question.
you already know. That's a
I'm the
loaded
wrong one to
question.
ask that.
You're the right one. 'Cause hey,
um, that's the loaded question. Because again, I've got 9 to 4, and all of
okay,
mine do something. And again, so back to the old school is at the young age, it's about free play. It's about as much as exposure to everything. Don't limit their access. Don't limit. Again, this is a basketball podcast. I know we all love basketball, but there's more things out there. That can be the end result, but that doesn't have to be the only option. And I think as much as you expose them, I think if we talk about today, I always argue if you look at any draft from any sport, your at least 5 of your first round draftees were all multi-sport athletes through high school. Mm-hmm. And in every sport, they're all multi-sport. So, I'm always going to challenge to it. You can do as much as you want to. At my kids were doing gymnastics at 18 months old. My 3-year-old does ninja and obstacle course stuff. And again, that's whether you take them to the playground, let them take some risk. Today's time, a lot of times we're too risk averse of worrying about them getting hurt, but not that we're going to put them in danger, but we have to trust them with low risk options and opportunities. My 3-year-old will jump off of a 24-inch box onto the ground. She'll learn how to fall, but she'll also learn how to get up.
Right.
So the age thing isn't really a thing to me. Appropriate things at certain ages is the thing. Because again, the cliche, let's talk about strength conditioning. They say in order to do plyometrics, you should be able to do 2 times your body weight, right?
Right.
When we talk about plyometrics, we're talking about box jumps and all that kind of. Have you ever gone to a kid and watched them jump off the swing and land? Is that not a plyometric? But I don't think that kid can lift 2 times his body weight. I think they jump from one table, or they're doing all this kind of, they're jumping and all this kind of stuff anyway. I don't think they can necessarily do 2 times their body weight. Right. So I think just encourage them to be active. Encourage them to put them in different atmospheres that challenge their body and their brains, from soccer to gymnastics to, just go out to the park and let them, a and swing, monkey bars,
right.
Let them get dirty. That's a little bit of all of the above. That's the old school part of
exactly.
Let them kick in the dirt. My kid, even for me, we didn't get into it. I'm a big foot guy, so my kids are barefoot in the dirt, in the grass. My girl will run on the sidewalk. So anything, just let them be kids. And the biggest thing about being a kid was the most exciting part was just being active. I was talking to my buddies today is that, a lot of kids aren't riding bikes. Shoot, we got some teenagers who don't even know how to ride a bike. Skateboard, all these different things that are out there that are just childhood fun things to do. So, the training is just a term put on active lifestyle. And it's just then tailored to what you want to do it for at a certain age and time.
No, I agree. I mean, hey, that's how we got started. I mean, whatever season it was, baseball, basketball, or football, we was out there playing 2-hand touch or sometimes rough tackle on there, out there with a stick, playing stickball. You know what I mean? Basketball on little garbage cans or some crates, living in New York, crates.
Yeah.
Like, we were out there at a very young age. You know what I mean? Some of you guys, young guys, don't know yet, but you have to do that, and I think we got away from that. But I'm glad that you still, you're bringing some of that back when we go into your gym. I mean, I'm afraid of you sometimes, Coach. I'm not gonna lie. That's a different conversation there, but but no, all jokes aside, like, you bring something serious, and again, that old school, what these kids don't understand, everything that they're doing now had to come from somewhere. You know what I mean? So why change something that's not broke?
So again, the man of 1,000 quotes. Here's one for you. Anything that has a present had a past. That's the only way it has a future.
All right. So first question is going to be your favorite recovery method: ice bath, massage gun, old-fashioned sleep, or is it something else? You got any?
Nope, just rest.
Just rest.
Meditate, unplug, sit down somewhere.
That's a good one. Definitely good to get rest.
We plug our phone. We recharge our phones more than we recharge our bodies.
That is, oh man, wow, coach, you hitting the jugular vein on that one. We might upset a lot of people out there on that one.
Hey, I'm here for it.
If you can train any athlete, past or present, who's getting the RHFITPRO treatment? Is there anybody you can name? You want to name?
No name, just the one who got the heart, who willing to work. Again, you got to be willing to humble yourself, be vulnerable, and be willing to put in the work. I've been fortunate to, like you said, to work with a lot of good people, good athletes, better people, and so and again, I think that's what it is. It's not just being talented, but also being a good person that will help you achieve your goals. So, and again, I think that's the thing. You got to be willing to be vulnerable, and got to be willing to put in the work.
You were saying how my kids are 5, 4, and 2, and I want to know, how do you deal with the attention span? Because I feel like I can't keep their attention for more than 2 minutes on anything.
You sure? Do they watch their cartoons?
No, they more tablet and Roblox. I'm trying to get them.
How long will they sit there with that? How long will they sit there with Roblox?
For at least an hour.
Yeah,
so they got it. They have attention.
They have attention.
You just got to encourage. You got to give them options with it. And again, it's like anything else. They probably don't like vegetables when they first start eating, but you start with it 1 spoon at a time. You just got to keep feeding a little bit at a time, giving them different options. And really, that's what it boils down in terms of the attention. And I think that's the learning curve. You can find, if they can sit there and they can watch their cartoon, they can watch their tablet for an hour. It's not an attention issue. It's just what gravitates. You just got to change. You got to redirect that attention aspect. And you may have to start it with small dosages of, you might go to the park for 10, 15 minutes, and that might be all you get from them. But then next time you go 30, 2 weeks later, you go a little 30 minutes. So it's just like anything else. You just small little things over time, and you start expanding upon finding different things. Again, when they given a chance to explore, if you give them the option of going to the park or taking a tablet, obviously a lot of them are going to end up taking a tablet. But we got to redirect that focus and redirect that energy to some of those other things. And that's kind of unfortunate. That's just part of the challenges with parenting and finding that balance between, risk, reward, and peace of mind. And not always just, I hate to say respectfully, not just pacifying by giving in to the tablet. You create a trade system. Hey, 30 minutes on the park, 30 minutes in the park gets you 15 minutes on the tablet. However, you start to redirect their attention, their focus.
And just to piggyback off what he said too, don't underestimate how smart and how much they will pay attention to. You just got to be more creative. One of the things that I found out for me with my kids is that I had to really learn how their habits. You know what I mean? And something that my mother taught me way back when was that, like, sometimes you have to have them do things that you want them to do, but make it as if they wanted to do it for themselves. You know what I'm saying? So you have to be a little bit creative to be that coach that, you know what I mean? To get them
here comes the hard hitter. Here's the hardest one that's sometimes the hardest one to swallow, is you also have to model what you want them to do.
Right. Gotcha.
You have to be that leading. They have to see it. To know they want to do it, to know that it's a thing to do. So sometimes that's the challenge, that we have to be that leading example. Again, crusade, mimic and model. They're going to mimic and model what they see. And sometimes that's what we ourselves have to keep ourselves accountable and be present for as much as we want for them. We have to kind of lead them by being that example.
A couple minutes ago, you mentioned vulnerability, and I know I'm really not sure if vulnerability is something that's coachable. It seems like an intangible that's not coachable. But how do we instill the concept of vulnerability, I guess, to make them a little more pliable?
I love that question. I think I will rightfully disagree. I think it is coachable, but you have to know it's accessible. a lot of times vulnerability is avoided, and we're not really addressing what being vulnerable is until we're faced with having to deal with situations that shows our level of weakness or our what understanding what vulnerability really is. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding of what vulnerable is. Sometimes I think it's just, telling on my business or being weak. I think it's also defining what vulnerable is for the individual. And I think that comes through having the conversations and as having tough conversations that sometimes they may not feel they have a platform to have. Again, not to bark on RHFITPRO, but I also find it also turns out to be a safe place for kids sometimes to say some things that they may feel that they don't have a place to say, in other words, because I meet them with the same level of respect that I won't. So I give them an opportunity to find their voice. And then when they find their voice, then they find vulnerability.
It's not just kids, Coach.
Say what?
It's not just kids.
And that's it. And the thing is that being able, and again, that to his credit, that's the exact same thing. You have to be willing to acknowledge that and be humble enough to accept that. That I think once you understand what vulnerability, I think you have to identify it. Once it can be identified, then it can be coached, and maybe if you don't want to use the word coach, it can be nurtured once it is identified. Maybe that's a different way of saying it. But I think so many times the word is so cliche that we avoid it as though it's something bad. But I tell your best athletes truly grow through their vulnerability when they accept their weaknesses. They accept what they're not good at. To be a player and be told that you're not very good at something, you have to be vulnerable enough to accept that, to fix it. We may just call it something else, but you have to humble yourself and be vulnerable to accept that deficiency and that criticism to be willing to fix it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like you want people to get their ego out the way.
Huh?
Sounds like we want folks to get their egos out the way.
100%. 100%. I think when you put that ego aside, that vulnerability, again, that's the way you're going to really grow at the end of the day. So I think that is definitely the case. And sometimes, that ego, the pride comes before the fall. And again, we're too busy trying to hold that versus trying to meet and understand it and be able to receive that message, because we want to be right. We don't want to admit the mistake, whatever that, what it may be sometimes. I always joke, I've never heard a coach or a parent say that they made a mistake, because they in the moment that they just knew they were making the right decision. But in a moment of reflection, you'll find out where you could have done something better, or at that time why you made that choice.
You might already have an answer, but finish this sentence. The perfect athlete is, if there is one,
is vulnerable. He's the one that's vulnerable enough to be coached. I think again, it's one of those things. I think, fortunately, in my experiences at every level, I think when we got at the moment of vulnerability, I think we had the greatest growth.
Right.
I think that's, unfortunately, don't mean to keep beating that word up, but I think that's what I keep. But if I had to go back to it, when they were the most vulnerable, when we had the greatest growth. Either accepting they weren't good at time management, or accepting that they were, too prideful to accept what was being told to them. Like we said, that parent will go to a Ron, ask them what to do, and then either not do it. But then they had to be vulnerable enough to come back and admit, hey, we tried something different, it didn't work. So I'm coming back to you again and again. Now, whether they do it the second time around, but there is again just that.
No, yeah, and the proof is in the pudding.
I have a question. How do you deal with the athlete and the parents' ego, feeling like their child is better than the state you think they're at?
How do I deal with the parent and a child ego? It's a very unique situation. Again, I'm very confident in who I am and my experiences. So I'm going to be honest with you. And if you can receive my critique or my criticism, then we can work with. Not, I kind of let you go your own path. I don't fight it. Again, like I said, I'll just be honest, and it comes from a good place. Um, and then based on how they can receive what I say to them, will then dictate how we perceive or if we don't perceive to go forward. Because again, as I said earlier, I'm not going to tell you how I feel. I'm going to tell you what I know based off my experiences and what I see and what you say. Like you tell me kids was parents like, oh, he's a hard worker, or he does X, Y, and Z. But then when I start asking you about your habits, your schedule, your routine, there's all these lapses. Well, what you say is not matching with what you do.
Right.
And then that's, again, because at the end of the day, again, the old school side of me, I don't care how many highlights you put on Instagram. I don't care how many fire emojis and fist bumps you do. Those aren't the decision makers, and those aren't the ones who are going to help you go where you want to go.
Right.
The ones that are just trying to ride with you and probably don't know what it really takes to get there. They just see that. I've never, again, I think we joke about it. I don't think I've ever seen remember that videographer is putting on that thing. You pay him to do edit highlights, not your lowlights.
Right.
So, you're only going to show that. So I think that is just dealing with, again, being honest with them. And then sometimes you find out it's not for everybody, because they're committed to their ego and what they believe. And you have to allow them, as a coach, you have to, stick to your guns and allow them to do something differently. And I usually say, I sit back and wait for them to come back.
Yeah.
That's the question that comes to mind for me. Have you ever been in a situation to where you had to fire a client, their parent?
100%. 100%.
Wasn't
again,
me, was it?
Huh?
Wasn't me, was it?
No. Again, unfortunately, you do have that. It's just where they're just committed to it just doesn't mix. And you have to be you have to do yourself and them a favor, and minimize that stress. And then you have to let them go their way, and you have to go and be okay with going your way as well. So yeah, we've had situations where we've had to respectfully part ways and wish them the best of luck.
And do we have to have basketball seminars in order to get parents on board to just start doing things the right way, or?
Yes, because they're left. They don't know what they don't know. Respectfully, I think we're of age where two things are happening with a lot of these sports parents now. One, I don't think a lot of them play sports. So they really don't know what it takes. They just see what they perceive it to take. And then because it's so fast tracked, the fear of being left behind or fear of being left out, or not, I would respectfully say, like, I've even had a parent, I think they were more nervous about not having something to post every weekend about their child playing or something more than it was the development of the kid. So sometimes, we have to make sure as parents don't put their pride, their ego in front of their kids' best interest.
Right.
So I think that's where I go back before. You have to get out in front, have real conversation with these parents. You kind of have to quote unquote, hit them in the head with some truths and realities, and then let them deal with that blow however they choose to deal with it respectfully. Because not to knock everybody and not everything always has the best intentions.
Right.
So you have to be, know your purpose, know what your objective agenda is within that circle, within that group. And knowing what the bigger picture is and the best interest for that group and that child as well. So the 100% having more seminars, Again, I think we talked about before, is, the kid may be talked to during the lesson, but how much follow-up and discussion is it with the parents to making
Right.
sure that message is being sent back in the right way?
Right.
Whether, and sometimes we just don't want to put in the extra work to have that follow-up with the parent. Like there, again, I can use Ron for example, that the kids will come in for a while and work out, and I wouldn't see or have conversation with Ron, but every now and then I would circle back and just have the hey, this is where we are, this is what we're doing, this is the conversation we're having, this is what we're looking for, because the parent becomes what I call the third eye. They're going to be at the practice, at the games, they're going to be at the house, making sure the things that are being taught or instructed are being followed up on.
Exactly. Oh yeah.
So the answer is yes. I think more parent-driven seminars separate from the kids with other parents. I think the reality is, I think other parents have questions. They just sometimes don't want to be the one parent to ask the question, or don't think about, again, some questions some other parents may have, didn't really understand how to put it together or who to ask.
Well, I'm just going to boast on Coach just a little bit right now and change it up just a little bit here for you, Coach. But I remember when I first met you, and we came into your gym, for that's the kids and stuff like that. I'm not sure if it was AJ or if it was Isaiah, but remember you told them to jump. I guess it was like the jump to touch the ceiling or touch the jump, right? So they jump. Then you said, okay, I want you to jump, but then squeeze your glute. And it added about like 5 inches to his vert. And something simple as that, like glutes, squeezing your butt cheeks. I'm making it funny here, but like it made a huge difference. So things like that, something simple as that, is what made me start realizing, like, putting fitness into my kids' game at a younger age to where it helped them get to where they're at. So I mean, I'm glad I made that investment, because it is an investment, but it's also helped them with their lifestyle right now. So, oh yeah, that's awesome. I give you, again, I'm always praising you, Coach. I always talk about it.
I appreciate it.
I'm doing it live on here for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Perfect. You definitely deserve it. We appreciate you.
All right. So if nobody got any more questions, definitely thank you, Coach Randy, for assisting us with all, assisting and speaking to us. Thank you for dropping some real knowledge today, showing us what it means to train the body and the mind. Also, for the viewers, if you're in the Atlanta area, make sure to check out RHFITPRO Performance Center and follow Randy's journey online and see how is he changing the game for all these athletes out there. I'm just gonna end it off. This is Off the Bench with Razi Sports, where you keep learning, moving, and leveling up on and off the court. Until next time, stay ready, stay built the ball, and always train for life.
All right. Thanks a lot, Coach. Thanks
a lot
for being here.
Thank you very much, and much success to you guys. Look forward to seeing how you carry this on.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Off the bench with Razi Sports.